Hey friends, welcome back to the Guitar Max channel. So this video is going to be a little bit different from the videos that I normally do. In this video, I want to talk about how to get the tone of one of my favorite guitar players, and that is Akira Takasaki from the band Loudness. Now the key here is that I'm going to talk about the amplifiers he uses and things like his guitars and his pickups. But the real secret to his tone is a picking technique that he uses. So this is one of those situations, you know how people are always talking about, oh yeah, you know, the tone is in your hands. And it's almost like a joke to some people, but this is one situation where the tone really kind of is in the hands, because when you're trying to get his tone, if you're not doing this particular picking technique that he uses, you can't quite nail his tone. Now we're going to get straight into this video. But real quick guys, if you enjoy videos like this, and also of course checking out cool guitars and staying up on all the latest stuff in the guitar universe, and you have not already subscribed, please consider subscribing right now. Okay, first let's talk about some equipment. Now Akira Takasaki, he's been playing guitar for a really long time. He really kind of got going back in the 70s. But despite that, even though back then guitars with single coil pickups were really more popular, Akira Takasaki has pretty much always used humbucker pickups, and in particular a very vintage voiced, kind of very pushed mid-range sounding pickup. Now over the years, Akira has had some really cool signature guitars from like ESP and Edwards, and he even has his own line of guitars called the Killer guitars, which you can't really get in the US, but occasionally you see them for sale like on eBay and that kind of stuff. And I don't have any of those guitars, but I do have this guitar here, which is the Kramer Gunstar Voyager. So it's got a similar body shape and overall body design, two humbuckers, the star body shape, and a Floyd Rose trim. And that's pretty much the same setup as far as pickups and hardware that he always uses. And these pickups in particular, which are actually Epiphone pickups, they still have that very vintage voiced, very mid-range focused sound to them. Now let's talk about amplifiers. So Akira pretty much always uses something along the lines of a modded Marshall, or modded British tone amplifier. And that's not to say that he has used Marshalls exclusively. In fact, he's used a lot of other companies. I've actually got one in the background here. Back in the 80s, in his Thunder in the East days, he was using the Metaltronics amps, and there's even some classic, really cool photos from that time period. But more recently, he's been using Friedman amps. And again, they still have that same overall tone. You start with that sort of British, very aggressive mid-range sound, and then you have the, the sort of Marshall, classic Marshall mods to it to give it that really cutting, overdriven sound, very saturated sounding. And because this is the Guitar Max channel, and of course I cannot afford a Friedman amp, which can cost, $4,000 or $5,000, I have this little guy right here, which is the Hot Tone Freeze B. Now I want to point out real quick, this video is not sponsored by Hot Tone. I bought this amplifier. It's just a really fun little amp. These things go for around $100. The key here, the reason I'm using this one, is this amp is modeled after one of those Friedman heads. So now let's just take a quick listen to the amp. Okay, but now let's get into the real secret sauce of the Akira Takasaki tone, and that is his picking technique. Now, here's what's going on with his picking technique. Are you guys familiar with pinch harmonics? Now, you probably are. Most people associate them with Zakk Wylde, and it sounds like this. A lot of people call it pinch harmonics because you are actually pinching the pick when you do that. Now, what's really going on is as the pick goes over the string, the tip of your thumb just rubs against the string right after the pick has gone over it. And that is what creates the harmonic. It's actually the edge of your thumb rubbing against the string just after the pick. That's what makes the harmonic. Okay, so you understand that technique, right? So the key here when it comes to Akira Takasaki is that he uses that technique on chords, not just single note lead guitar parts. And that gives his rhythm playing a very distinctive sound. Now that's the intro riff from the song Like Hell off of the album Thunder in the East. And let me play it without the technique, and then I'll add the technique back in so you can really hear the difference. So what this technique does is it really exaggerates the harmonics that are in that sort of upper mid-range area of the guitar's tone that it already has. It almost sounds as if you're using a wah pedal or like an auto wah. Let me give you some more examples here. It's always hard to explain sounds with words, but it gives it sort of a quacky sound. Now there's a few other things he does with his riffs that I want to mention. One is that he has that very classic 80s technique of riding on an open string with higher chords in between. So a lot of this stuff. He also does a lot of arpeggiated chords and turns those into riffs. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that because he's using that pinch harmonic technique both on single note passages and chords as well, most of the rhythm parts he's doing are going to be based on downstrokes or downpicking. Now, obviously, when he's playing like a super fast lead solo or something, he's using a lot of alternate picking in there, and he also does a lot of really cool tapping licks. But when it comes to his rhythm parts, most of it is going to be downstrokes. And that's really just because when you're doing mostly downstrokes, it makes that pinch harmonic technique a lot more doable. You can do it on upstrokes, but it's pretty difficult, and it almost feels as if you're doing a completely different technique. I know most of my audience probably already knows who Akira Takasaki is, but if you're not familiar with him or with his work in the band Loudness, I really want to encourage you guys to check him out. He's easily one of my favorite guitar players, heavy metal guitar players, period, and certainly one of my favorites from Japan, along with Shiyu from Galnerius, and then Masayoshi Takanaka, who's a fusion guitar player, who's also another just incredible guitar player. If you haven't listened to the band Loudness before, definitely check out Thunder in the East. I feel like that's really the album that made them really big outside of Japan. And then a few years later, they had an album called Soldier of Fortune, which is another favorite of mine. And the best part of all of this is that Akira Takasaki is still making albums and still shredding to this day. Okay guys, that is it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. I'm gonna have links for everything I was talking about down in the video. You know, if you want to check out this guitar or that little amplifier I was using, I will also have a link for my brand new instructional program, which is all about different tapping licks and stuff. So I'll have a special link down in the video description for that as well. Guys, thanks a ton for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll talk to you soon.